Hey, how you doing? Let's have a conversation about how the flow of information impacts an organization's operations. Please join me on this journey of knowledge dissemination. Enjoy the video. In July 2025, MIT researchers released a report that reviewed over 300 publicly disclosed AI initiatives. The report was based on interviews with representatives from 52 organizations and survey responses from 153 senior leaders. There are a few things from that report that have caught my attention. One is this: despite $30 to $40 billion in enterprise investment into Gen AI, 95% of organizations are getting zero return. That's shocking. A second piece of information from that report that caught my attention was this: the core barrier to scaling is not infrastructure, regulation, or talent. It is learning. Most Gen AI systems do not retain feedback, adapt to context, or improve over time. Additionally, the researchers found that for mission-critical work, 90% of users prefer humans. Okay, so how do I feel about this? All right, I'm going to try something new and go a little unscripted. Okay, here it goes, unscripted. I think that is remarkable. I mean, AI is reported to be the next iteration, next revolution that will upend businesses and organizations and societies writ large. But the idea that 90% of complex tasks are still preferred to have some level of human involvement is fascinating. But I'm not too surprised, because although AI has a plethora of potential, there is something to be said about that. The reality is that as great as AI is today and will become in the future, there is something that is uniquely human when it comes to how organizations function. Until AI develops the capacity to replicate a lot of the senses that us humans possess, I think there's going to be a lot of information, situational context that is left on the table. For example, humans, we have the ability of all of our senses. We can see things, we can hear things, we can touch things, we can taste things. It will be very difficult for AI to replicate those types of sensors. I'll be even more specific. Imagine providing IT support. Now, this is something that I know very well. I provided IT support for 12 and a half years. So I intimately understand the responsibilities of that role. But imagine a situation: someone comes to you for an IT support issue. Maybe they write an email, maybe they come to you in person, maybe they call you on the phone. And perhaps you think that the issue is simple enough where you can say, okay, well, I'm going to send to you a link to a knowledge article, or I'm going to write in the body of an email instructions on how to resolve it. Now, let's say the problem still doesn't get resolved, or the person follows up and you say, I'm still uncertain of how to proceed. Okay, well, then maybe you leave your desk, you go to perhaps that person's where they are located, and you say, okay, well, why don't you walk me through what you're trying to do? Okay, right then and there is something that AI cannot do. AI doesn't have the ability to observe and watch to see, okay, well, what is a person doing? And while they're observing how that person is going through that particular workflow that is presenting difficulties for them, AI is not going to take into account their tone or how they're breathing. These are situational and contextual clues that could say, okay, well, maybe this person is short on time. Perhaps I should pivot or adjust the solution I recommend right now, right? Maybe I just need a good enough solution for the moment and then follow up for a more long-term solution. So that 90% of complex, rich context-specific situations that AI cannot address is remarkable. But I would urge caution, right? Again, technology is great. There's a lot of opportunities with AI. But you can't simply have humans and say, okay, you're a human, you're different from AI, everything is good. No. You got to do a lot more than that. You got to take ownership of your human workforce. And taking ownership requires you to have a strategy. Because as great as humans are, right, we got our senses, we can do things that AI can't do. There are some flaws to us humans. You know, just like AI and technology has flaws, us humans have flaws. What might I be talking about? Well, humans are emotional. Humans are irrational. Humans have competing priorities. Humans have ulterior motives. So as long as you have humans in the mix, you do have to find a way to navigate those things that make us uniquely human. So how do you do that? Well, one of the things that is common ground across all humans is this idea of trust and transparency. If your organizations is undergoing a change and your workforce has no idea what's happening, well, that could be a little concerning. And so what may happen is that they clamp up. They say, okay, well, why should I share the very thing that is justifying my salary premium or the very thing that's giving me my job? Or why should I train someone to then replace me? That doesn't make any sense. And so there has to be some relationship involved. That's just the reality when you're dealing with humans. Okay. So what does that look like? How do you engender trust? How do you develop an environment that is conducive to that type of knowledge transfer? That example that I just mentioned a few moments ago with respect to all this information, right? Being to observe and take into account the situational context. That's important. That shouldn't be taken lightly. But that information can be combined with what is perhaps documented and codified and can be accessible by anyone. And now you got something that is truly remarkable, right? Because now you're combining codified, documented, explicit knowledge with something that is observable, something that is actionable, something that is happening right now, and you're providing a path forward. Imagine how many organizations have that daily, hourly, by the minute. And so I think that is astounding. That MIT report is truly eye-opening. Again, that dollar amount, what was it, 40 to 50 billion? I think it was. No, 30 to 40 billion. That is crazy. 95% have zero return. But to be fair, the report does acknowledge that, okay, well, maybe these large enterprise-wide initiatives are not resulting in the ROI that was expected. The report does mention that tools like ChatGPT or Gemini are being used, and I think that is a reality. Some of you may have heard the term shadow IT. In fact, I made a video about the very thing, shadow IT. But there was a subset of shadow IT called shadow AI. So even if organizations are not quantifying the returns or where are the returns for the enterprise-wide AI, it doesn't mean that AI itself is not being used. Now that's an opportunity and a risk. Yeah, so okay, fine. Maybe someone is using ChatGPT or Gemini or one of the other models to craft a better email, or to maybe quickly analyze some text that they're short on time and they don't have there's competing priorities, they don't have time to read something, and so maybe they're using ChatGPT or Gemini to analyze something or put together something, and that's fine and dandy as long as there's no proprietary information being put at risk. So there's the opportunity, but it's also a risk, right? Because without having a conversation about what data should be put into these models, there is a risk there that they put very sensitive information, which could then, maybe be trained by these models and, so on and so forth. But you don't really want that. And so here's an opportunity for organizations to truly have a conversation about how do they move forward, how do they speak to their teams to identify, well, what do they need? What's the gap between what is currently being provided and what they really need? And then make sure that there is some kind of consensus about the best way to move forward. Because you know what? Surprise, surprise, they are actually using the tools, right? Whether you know it or not, your workforce is using the tools. And again, going back to the shortcomings of AI, you can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to eliminate my workforce and not deal with the headache. Okay, well, you know what? You try that. You try eliminating your entire workforce and see what happens. Or maybe certain sections. So, back to IT. I get it. Labor costs are one of the highest expenses an organization can incur. And if you are a publicly traded company, right, you've got an obligation to maximize shareholder wealth. Well, operationally, that reality to maximize shareholder wealth by simply cutting off your human workforce may be counterproductive, because again, there's a lot of contextualized information that is not being received. And oftentimes these AI models or these agentic tools don't have the benefit of remembering sessions across individuals, or maybe what if a person doesn't log into an account, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't have the benefit of that. So it is remarkable. I think the path forward, the right path forward, is a middle ground, right? Acknowledge technology, acknowledge the tools, acknowledge agentic AI, understand where the strengths are, right? They are incredibly capable at managing and sifting voluminous amounts of data. But then, the other side of voluminous amounts of data is, okay, well, how do you contextualize it? How do I know what's important? The idea of relationships is fascinating because, look, different organizations have departments, right? Got an IT department, you got a marketing department, you got a finance department. And just as individuals can be siloed, so can data. And that's another disadvantage with these tools, right? Is that these tools are probably not going to cross departments to acquire context that would be useful to understand how to diagnose something or what the path forward is. Humans, though, they could develop and foster relationship capital with their colleagues from all across the company. So that way, if something looks a little off, say, I don't know about that. Let me go talk to Jennifer in finance and see if this actually makes sense. Or let me go speak with John in marketing or Ashley in IT to get a better understanding of that. So AI technology is not really going to replace the need to foster and develop the relationship capital amongst colleagues within all organizations. And so that's a risk. What about other things, right? I just kind of talk about, day-to-day operations, but what about things like innovation? Now, this is going to get interesting because the idea of innovation, it's you kind of get a little philosophical here. But let's say we think about disruptive innovation and the Clayton Christensen aspect of, going on the low end of a market and then, gradually working your way up. And then once you've increased the quality of your product, you disrupt the incumbent players. Okay, that's kind of like the Clayton Christensen idea of disruptive innovation. But what of just innovation just in general, right? It doesn't have to be disruptive, just innovation. And so how do organizations develop innovation? Where do new ideas come from? And this is another thought about AI. So aside from 95% of the spend not resulting in ROI, or at least anything quantifiable, you run the risk of regurgitating information and ideas and thoughts that have already existed. And so here's kind of a provocative question. Is innovation, are new ideas something that is uniquely human, right? Someday when AI becomes, self-aware and whatnot, okay, maybe those things could be innovative, but again, back to human senses. I mean, if you are, in the future, right? And if you're, even if you're an AI, entity, you are aware of your existence. Do you have sensors of smell? Can you develop the sense of fear? Do you develop hunger? When you think of innovation, how many things have changed because of our ability to sense things? Or just examples that have nothing to do with technology that have then been used to guide how a technology innovation can occur. Okay, a couple examples off the top of my head. So when we think of Google, right now, that search engine that I'm sure everyone is aware of, what did the idea for developing search engine and Google organizing the world's information come from? Well, you know what? When Google, started, they developed this algorithm called PageRank after, Larry Page. And the idea is, roughly, the idea is, okay, well, the most cited source is probably the most authoritative. And there's some truth to that now, notwithstanding something that has, gone viral for the wrong reasons. But we could probably assume that something that is cited more frequently than others probably has some level of authority relative to something that was just created 2 minutes ago, and no one's heard of it, and some author from nowhere. Okay, maybe not always. Sometimes the experts get it wrong, but more likely than not. So, but that kind of is from not necessarily technology. When you think of bibliographies and you think of research and citations, typically there's some kind of correlation between when something is cited and when's not. Or let's think of Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg going to Phillips Exeter Academy, and there's probably other schools that had something like that. But there was literally a Facebook. It was a physical book of students and maybe alums. With their picture on it, with their portrait, and maybe the class year and their name and whatnot, and that was kind of the inspiration for Facebook, right? I was like, okay, well, why not we digitize this example of having the centralized platform where people can connect and you can see what they look like. So that was kind of interesting. Or the now defunct project from Google, Circles, right? Google Circles. Now it didn't work out, but that reflected a reality of humans, and that we have different circles, right? We've got our circle of colleagues, with whom we share certain information. We've got our circle of friends, with whom we send a different set of information and have different types of experiences. We've got our circle of family. So it's different individuals who we can place in various circles. And so the idea of Google Circle tried to replicate that reality where you don't just have one profile, you share every single thing with everybody. It didn't work, obviously, but that idea, that concept, was rooted in the real world. And I just thought that was fascinating. But nevertheless, so again, innovation. We could think of it really spans. We could think of whether we're talking about something with medicines and pharmaceuticals, and the idea of needing to innovate and provide medicine or healthcare to people because people want to live. That's something that may be uniquely human. I don't know if AI has as much incentive to tirelessly work towards something, even if, maybe statistically it shows that, statistically speaking, maybe you shouldn't spend your time on this. Now, to us humans, that makes sense, right? If statistically speaking, even if the probability is low, but we could save thousands or millions of lives, right, by investing time and energy and money towards something, that's powerful. Why? Well, because, generally speaking, humans value human life. It's pretty up there. Can AI appreciate that the same? I don't know. Or just conveniences. I mean, it could be anything. I don't know off the top of my head about other. Okay, how about this? What about just eating? Now, look, I'm not a chef. I have no idea the process for identifying new ingredients is, but eating is something. Well, it's not uniquely human. All living creatures eat, but you don't see. I mean, look, humans are the only creature. That real only species that really have chef. I mean, if you're a tiger, you're just gonna hunt what is available, eat it, and that's fine. I mean, tiger is not gonna season its meat, but humans spend a lot of time, just with the craft of food. And is that innovation? Right? A chef who thinks of a menu and mixing different ingredients. And no, I mean, yeah, maybe it's innovation. It's a different type of innovation, right? It's not necessarily technology innovation, but it's okay. It's a different type of innovation. But where are these ideas going to come from? Okay, what does it mean to be human, right? And a lot of things that we think of come from our experiences or us observing other people go through something. Where do these ideas come from, and can AI replicate that? So that report from MIT, look, it didn't go into cooking or the things I'm talking about right now. But if I, at the risk of overgeneralizing that report and just kind of extrapolate those small findings, say, well, wait a minute, this is interesting. What might that mean? So all this energy, all this excitement, all this effort towards, okay, AI, technology. Okay, that's great. Adopt technology. Don't be a Luddite, right? You don't want to get left behind. But then also recognize those things that are uniquely human, the things that really only humans can provide to. But you have to be intentional about including humans as part of the process. You have to understand where they're fitting in and things like that. So I think that's funny. What else? I believe that many organizations operate based on undocumented knowledge, and there's a lot of information and context that is difficult, if not impossible, to document. Again, observing someone is one thing. Taking note of someone's facial expressions or tone is one thing. And I just think it's important to appreciate that information, those dynamics, and understand how they fit into an organization's goal, or just a particular individual's workflow, right? Their work life. What does that look like? I want to say another point with the AI example. Over the past few weeks, maybe months, there have been announcements of mass layoffs. I get it. Right? Sometimes an organization has to lay off its workforce. Again, labor costs are one of the highest expenditures an organization can incur. I am curious, though, about how those layoffs are conducted. And if these restructuring or these decisions are not managed properly, I think there is a risk that the remaining workforce see what's happening and then withhold, right? They engage in knowledge hoarding, which could exacerbate the hidden knowledge that exists in organizations. Because when the organization doesn't know what it doesn't know, when the organization doesn't know what it knows, it makes suboptimal decisions. And so without transparency, without trust, without communicating to your workforce, okay, well, this is why we're making the decisions. This is our strategy. This is why we've decided to pursue things the way we pursue. Perhaps there's an opportunity to solicit feedback from those who are impacted. But I think things are going to get really interesting, with how those who remain, how they respond. And look, it's not always the case that a layoff is the direct result of AI, but we do see it. Now I think that's interesting, right? Because 95% of organizations are saying they have no quantifiable ROI, according to the MIT research. Yet, I wonder how many of them are going to attribute, AI, whether it's enterprise-wide AI or, I don't know, maybe it's not enterprise-wide, maybe it's just small tools, but we'll attribute AI, these efficiencies. We're more efficient, so we're going to, reduce our workforce by 15%. Is it really? Or is it the case that you maybe hired too much, or you made some other bad decision, and now you're just going to scapegoat AI? I think that's also going to be interesting. How many organizations are going to scapegoat AI? How many organizations are going to scapegoat AI to wash away bad decisions that had nothing to do with AI? I think that's going to be really, really interesting. All right, what was it? This channel, and if you look at the description of the channel, I know I mentioned about my company Nusavon, and the focus is providing software solutions for IT staff at post-secondary institutions. Primarily post-secondary institutions, maybe later on in the future, I'll expand beyond that. But all of my previous videos have very much intentionally been about a wide range of topics. And the idea is to showcase that, okay, well, even if you are not my audience for the technology solutions that I'm building, this idea of knowledge management, this idea of intellectual capital and institutional knowledge hits everywhere. It's ubiquitous. And so irrespective of the industry, irrespective of a person's position, whether they are an employee or they're a customer, wherever, it touches all facets. And so that's why a lot of my other videos, and even this one, have a wide range of topics. Just in case if you're curious as to why my website, nusavon.com, or this YouTube channel have seemingly this type of content, but then it seems to be focused on a different type of audience. That's why. It's not completely for nothing. But that's the idea of why I have all these different videos. All right, well, I'm kind of out of immediate ideas right now, but hopefully this unscripted approach, well, it's half unscripted approach, was enjoyable. Again, just let me know if you like the unscripted approach, if you prefer the more scripted approach that seems to be more concise. Nevertheless, please subscribe, comment, like. Let me know how you think about this particular subject. Are you engaged or participating in any kind of AI or agentic AI decisions? Are you affected by it? Let me know if you have any thoughts on any of the other videos of mine that you may have seen. In any event, please, I invite you into this conversation because knowledge is for everyone. Thank you.